Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bevvies with the Boys. We're now on episode 7, which is already mind-blowing to me. I'm Munchables, this is Dagda up at the top left. We are the boys, and tonight we're joined for Bevvies by Ender and Froskurinn, who I'm pretty sure you guys probably already know who they are. But let's do a quick little whip around anyway. If you guys want to introduce yourselves and let me know what you're drinking tonight. Ender, we'll start with you.
Hello, my name's Christy, and I'm an alcoholic.
You've come to the right place.
Just got dark for the IC.
Dude, you're 1 pixel. I don't even understand.
Well, to be fair, there's at least a few pixels. There's at least 12 there. What are you drinking tonight, mate?
I've got some hite right there. Boom.
Oh, I've had that before. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's
okay. Well, there you go.
Sorry, I'm a bit of a beer snob. Froskurinn, introduce yourself. Let us know what's going on.
Hi, I'm Frosk. Please minus the urine, and I will be drinking water responsibly tonight because alcohol doesn't mix well with my medication.
Copy that. No worries. So a responsible drinker on my left. Dagda, what are you on tonight, mate?
To make up for Frost drinking, I'm going to do double.
Oh,
I appreciate that.
Here we go.
I'm going to be on Kraken rum for tonight. So yeah, I've got a bit of orange to mix with that because
Full
people
pirate.
are like, Fanta and dark rum is delicious.
Wait,
but
what are you putting with your rum?
Fanta, like Club Orange.
Is this an actual drink?
This is an actual drink. I'm drinking it right now. It is delicious. It tastes like an ice cream that we have in Ireland called a super split.
Is that
But
so?
yeah.
That's an Irish thing.
I mean, I'm sure other people have done it, but it is super tasty. Like, just trust me with it. It's really good.
All right.
I believe Dagda when he starts talking about drinks. I believe him. I trust that man.
Faith?
I'm on the Doom Bar tonight, which is a amber ale from Cornwall, and it's actually fucking great. It's maybe my favorite beer, which is
You like longingly look at the can. He's like,
I was double checking that. I was
I
double
think
checking if
that's
it's right.
his favorite. Yeah.
I was fairly sure it was Cornwall, but I had to double check that one. But yeah, it's if you haven't had Doom Bar and you like amber ales, 100% recommend it.
He's looking at it, he's like, can I turn this into a fleshlight? Probably not.
You underestimate my ingenuity there, Frosk.
Wait, there's a will, there's a way.
All right, we're already kicking off, aren't we? All right, so I want to start off with like kind of a very like zoomed out look because obviously we don't have like worlds just happened or anything like that to talk about. So this one's going to be a little bit of a different episode. But before we do actually jump into the conversation, I do just want to very quickly say, Dagda, happy birthday, mate. Everyone in chat, give a happy birthday to Dagda. It's the birthday bonanza here on Bevvies With The Boys. No, I said I wouldn't sing. I never said I wouldn't say happy birthday. So everyone in chat, please.
I wouldn't sing.
Please
so
Mate, take it away.
No,
Take
no,
it away. But yeah, so I wanted.
Come on, Ender.
So I did want to kind of jump into a conversation to start off with on you guys and your kind of your histories, because obviously you're 2 American casters in Europe talking about League of Legends, and that's got to have been an interesting journey together. And I know vaguely to an extent both of your stories, at least within reason, but I feel like there's got to be a lot more to that. So I was wondering if we could kind of get your retelling of kind of the checkpoints of like where you started, what inspired you in the first place, and then kind of the steps that were made over the course of however many years to get to the position where you are Americans that have traveled the world and now you're in Berlin talking about League of Legends. Like that's kind of a crazy story.
do you want to rock, paper, scissors for who goes first?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm pretty sure it just all looks like rock.
Was it
from
2
your
out of
Ready?
3 or
Ready?
what?
Okay.
Wait, but do you do rock, paper, scissors shoot, or do you go on scissors? Because I go
Rock,
on scissors.
paper, scissors.
Yeah, okay, nice.
Yeah.
All right. Rock, paper, scissors. All right, okay. Are we 2 out of 3 or what?
Oh fuck, sorry.
Let's go. I'm already up. I need to put you in the ground. Rock, paper, scissors. Okay.
Scissors?
Tie?
I don't know what it is on Ender's
paper,
side, to be honest.
I don't know.
What? Oh, you can't.
Oh,
see
it's
me.
one apiece.
It's
One
just a
apiece.
It's
pixel.
one piece. Okay, go.
Okay.
Rock, paper, scissors. Ooh.
Oh.
Rock, paper, scissors. No.
Okay, Froskurinn wins.
Okay.
So you get choice,
Oh.
Froskurinn. You get choice.
Why
Do you
did
want
I
to
go
go
2 out
first
of
or
3?
second?
Ender can go first. Get
Okay.
fucked.
Ender. So we'll start with what I know. I know that you used to be like a game tester type. I don't know what it's actually what the title is.
Used to work in a
And then you
brewery,
came to
so I
Berlin to cast LEC, but I'm fairly sure there is more than those two details to your story. So, like, where did it all begin, mate?
Yeah, I was a quality assurance analyst. No, it
Oh.
started. I'd been playing League since season 3, and I really wanted to be a pro player. In season 6, I hit master tier like in spring, but then quickly realized like to get to a pro level, it would take like many years, and it would be very difficult, and I may not even be able to do it. So I was like, well, I really like esports. What's the next best thing? So I looked into being a caster, coaching, and analyzing. And out of those 3, casting was just the most like easily approachable. Like I just went on Reddit and like looked for a bunch of amateur leagues. So I started like casting a bunch of those. But then pretty quickly I realized like the leagues themselves were kind of garbage. Like you didn't make any money and the games were just bad. So I was like, okay, I want to like watch a real region. So I did like one of the bootleg broadcasts of the LMS, and I was gonna stream every LMS game in 2017 spring. But then 2 weeks into the season, I was on the Riot Games website looking for jobs, and I was looking for casting jobs. I actually applied for the ULCS then, and they never replied to me, but we'll ignore that.
Skip over that little detail.
We'll gloss over that part of the timeline. No, but I saw a listing for like to be a referee for the LCS, and it was like, sweet, I already lived in LA. It was a job that didn't need a college education. I had just graduated high school. So, oh yeah, that's the other thing. I took a gap year to try and make it in esports. My parents let me do that. So I got that job. I had to stop doing the LMS thing because it was just like the times were terrible for it. But then pretty quickly after that, I ended up going to the Riot campus on a like player labs experience, which is like they would email a bunch of players that lived around LA and invite them to test like new champions. So I tested Zion Rakan, dumpstered the playtest. They were like, hey, you should consider joining the playtest team. So I applied, got in, boom, easy clap. And that was sort of the quick journey there. The checkpoints along the way where I got to go to MSI 2017 in Brazil. I was on stage behind Faker when SKT won MSI. When
thanks to you.
Hey,
Yeah,
didn't
all
stop
thanks
the
to me.
fan.
I escorted a fan off the stage after he jumped the stage, hugged Faker and the other members. That was wild.
I see you saved Faker's life. Yeah, okay.
I saved Faker's life. Faker bowed to me. Koma handed me his notebook at one point. He handed me his notebook, his phone, and his badge with all their strategies in it.
And you just bolted.
And you
were
didn't
just
run.
gone.
No, I didn't run. But that legitimately did happen. But yeah, then working with the playtest team for the rest of that year, basically. And then towards the end of the year, around November, I want to say, Quickshot actually tweeted out like ULCS is looking for new color casters, like reply with a VOD. So I just replied to his Twitter DM with a VOD of mine, even though I was working at Riot, just replied on Twitter. And then he sent me a DM like the next day and was like, he replied to the tweet, check your DMs. And I had never gotten like notifications on Twitter before. So I was like, what is this? That was wild. And then, yeah.
That's like the ultimate tweet reply, right? Especially from
it was wild.
when you sent that
like,
VOD and he's like, check your DMs because that's public as well. It's like,
I like how
you feel like a
Twitter got him
superstar.
a job, but he still can't get verified on it.
It's just relentless, isn't it? It's every single tweet I see, every single everything. That is the reply. But sorry, I did just want to ask one quick question in amongst that story. Where does so you joined Riot as a QA analyst,
but then referee first.
Oh, so you joined as a referee and then became right.
Yeah,
okay, I wasn't sure if that was like some kind of
as a referee. I wasn't like a Riot or anything. It was like a day hire sort of deal. So like I would just show up for like the actual LCS days themselves, do the reffing, which was like super chill and easy. And then would be done. But I almost became head referee for LCS in 2018. I basically had an offer to be head referee for LCS or to go cast ULCS, and one of them looked better than the other, so I took that one.
One of them gets your replies on Twitter.
Yeah, one of them was just like, check your DMs, and it's just Quickshot going, sorry, you're actually just terrible. We're just not interested. Sorry for you.
No.
Oh god. Damn. So
was wild.
and then you made it to
The
Berlin.
DM looked like he was like fishing for information. He was like, "So what's your give me your personal information, like
Yeah.
name, phone number, email." Like,
Get your
what's
credit card number.
Yeah,
your
what's the
social
what's the 3
security.
digits on the back? Yeah.
mom's maiden name? You know, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
But
Goddamn.
yeah. Then took me. I was in visa jail for like 6 months, and then they're like, actually, you don't need a visa. You're allowed to come here as like a business trip for less than 90 days, and then that happened. So we're all
Nice.
good.
Sweet. So gamer from California changed your mind about going pro, and then found an alternate route. That's cool.
Pretty much.
Froskurinn, I believe you've got obviously a bit of a longer tail, because you've been around a little while in the esports scene. That's not an insult. I feel like that came across as an insult.
Boomer.
I'm
Wait,
almost 30.
Same, me too. Dagda
Yeah,
now as well. He's
28
joining the
today.
club.
Oh,
Oh,
it
yeah.
hurts.
Where did it all begin? And at what point did it all begin? Like, at what point did you become involved in the LPL? Because obviously, originally you are that LPL fangirl, right? Or that Chinese fangirl. So where did all that start? Like, at what point did it all really kick off?
I'll try to give you the abridged version. Essentially, like Ender, I was trying to go pro, was never good enough. I didn't cap at Masters, I capped at Diamond 1, so there was like a big gap. I was like, this probably isn't for me, guys. Like, I'm out. And then I was just doing a bunch of streaming. Coaching and commentating didn't really exist in terms of like vocabulary back then for mainstream. So I would just called it like reviewing, and my viewers would send me their VODs, and then I'd watch them and kind of cast or coach over it, and then kind of like send it back. And my specialty used to be like champion matchups, which now, fuck if I know any of those. Like, that is a very long time ago. And some people from ESL saw one of my streams one day and was like, hey, you should try out and be a caster. So I tried out for what was then like the EPS. I think it was like their pro series. Basically, it was the North American Challenger scene. Before
Where is this on like the overall timeline? Like, what year is
it was
this?
like 2013,
Okay.
kind of. I started playing League back in uni. My college roommate was like obsessed with it, and like I had never played a computer game before. I was like total console only, and I remember being really mad that I couldn't use the arrow keys to move the champions. I was like, "What the fuck is this? This is bullshit." And we were like, "I think I need to buy Kale right now while she's on rotation, or I won't be able to buy her ever again."
Yeah.
Like those were those types of fears. But I started casting EPS, and Zyrene used to work for ESL. I basically like took Zyrene's spot because he had just gotten hired by Riot then, and he was watching one day when I happened to be casting with a guy named Pyrotechnics. And Zyrene pulled us into a Skype chat and was basically like, you guys have talent, you should work together and continue to build your synergy, and then hopefully like Riot will try to hire you. And we're like, fuck yeah, let's go. So I looked at Pyro, I was like, I don't know you, you don't know me, want to cast together forever? And he's like, yeah, sure. So we
How's that going?
I was cool. Too soon.
Sorry, that was meaner than I intended it to be.
Dead.
I love you, Pyra. I actually really like Pyra.
Yeah.
He's a really good
Pyra's
guy.
a good lad.
Everyone puts me so my legal name is Devin and Pyra's name is Devin, so we were both Devin. It's terrible. And if you know Pyra, you know that spirals into a conversation for hours.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I was living with Kelsey Moser at the time, and she was writing freelance for LOL Esports, and she had to pick between writing for the LMS or the LPL, and she chose to write for the LPL. And so she naturally was really into the Chinese League of Legends scene after IPL 5. And so I was getting a lot of that like adjacent information, and she really wanted to run a like a content series called China Talk, and Rapid Casting was supposed to be their host, but he just kept bailing, was super flaky all the time. And I turned to her one day, I was like, bitch, I will make you the graphics, I will host it myself. Like, oh, who do you want me to invite? And so I ended up hosting China Talk, not really knowing anything about the LPL, and then over time began to watch and invest more into the region. And then Kelsey really wanted to do a English broadcast of the LPL because it didn't exist at the time. So like what Ender was talking about with the bootleg LMS, we did a bootleg LPL. It was Kelsey, me, and Pyra and I were doing it so we could practice for the EPS. So what we would do is we would cast Go for LOL's European in the morning, and then go to work, and then come home from work, do the EPS, and then at night into early morning do LPL, sleep, and then do it all over again.
Jesus.
And we took that stream, I think we started with like 4 viewers, and our finals for EDG versus OMG, we got to like 48,000, and we went to Twitch in San Francisco. And Twitch and Garvey were helping us. Like we were in studio, and Kelsey was like the observer onto it, and we like build the graphics, like ran everything. And then Pyra and I were like, we're gonna move in together. Let's go to Colorado. Let's get an apartment. We can build a whole streaming room, and we can run like the Brazilian English broadcast and the LPL English broadcast and the LMS English broadcast. And we're getting ready to do all of this, and Riot's like, cease and desist right now. Like, woo! Police time. And shut it all down, and then gave the LPL to the Oceanic broadcast. But Riot hated me. They hated me at this time. They refused to hire me. So I immediately went to Oceania, which was run by a guy named Jake Spawn Tiberi. Love Spawn. And I started messaging him. I was like, I will give you everything I know. I will write you notes on every single team. I will show you every single backstory. Like, I will help you do this. And for the entire split, I was like, going back and forth with them and trying to like help them build out the new LPL English broadcast. Papa Smithy then left for LCK, and because I had built up good working relationships with Spawn went to Riot and was basically like, this one's on me. Hire Frosk, give her 6 months on contract to Oceania in 2015. If she does poorly, like that's it, it's gone. If not, like we'll rehire. So they brought me over on trial. I guess I did well because they brought me back. Got trapped in visa jail as well for Melbourne.
That's going to be a consistent theme, isn't
it? And then eventually went over to Oceania, did the LPL product, where Jake was the like owner of the product. Didn't really like hit my stride in terms of casting until MSI in Brazil, because Jake had always been the LPL representative, and they only take one LPL representative like every single time. And because of the Zika virus, I think it was, where if you're trying to get pregnant, it can cause problems. Well, Jake and Jenna were trying to get pregnant, and so Jake couldn't go to Brazil because of the virus. And so he was like, take this one. She's never going to have kids. And I was like, I'm going to my first international tournament, Dad. I like showed up with my school books. I was like there like 3 hours early. I was like, I'm ready. Dash, I made printouts. It has all the, I literally, my first day on analyst desk for MSI, I had printouts of all of the LPL players. So like a photo of them and like all of their stats and their backstory and how to say their name. I'm like, here. And Dash was like, this is amazing. Thank you. And then since then, they're like, yeah, we really like working with Frosk.
Yeah, that's how to make a good impression right there. Jeez. So
then I just went to Shanghai, and now I'm in LEC.
So I want to interject like one quick question in there. So you mentioned that you were in the MSI in Brazil, and Ender, your face lit up. Did you guys meet at that event? Because that's the MSI that you were at. Was that?
I did watch the run over to Faker, and now I know who that giant was standing next to him.
How deep into the tournament did you actually get? Because I only did
I was there to finals.
Knockout. You were finals. Okay, okay. Yeah, no, we never met though. I'm trying to think of who I actually met on that trip. I met Azale, Jat, Pastry Time, all the NA people pretty much. And then I observed the EU and other regions from afar.
See, this is because they probably, you met them at like a bar or like an after party or like a dinner or something?
So I met Azale at the studio because on an off day, we went and played Flex Q on the Brazilian server. And while we are absolutely smurfing and piss slow in Brazil, the enemy team was like, which MSI team? Which MSI team? And we said, because we're on Riot accounts, right? With no normal games ever played, just immediately jumping into ranked. So we replied SKT. They're like, Faker, OMG. It was great, yeah. And then I met Jat when we went to what's it called? The giant statue of Jesus.
Yeah.
I know the statue. I couldn't tell you what it's called.
Yeah. We went to that, and then I met Pastry Time at the after party. Yeah.
Okay.
See, we would never cross paths because I have a reputation. I don't go out. I don't leave my room. I do not go to the after parties. I say
maybe for the flex queue though. You missed an opportunity there.
Okay, well, paths didn't cross unfortunately, but hey, you know that's life, isn't it? So you guys obviously pretty interesting stories. Pretty I would actually say smoother stories than I expected, at least to an extent.
Oh, what?
Don't
worry, there's a lot of bumps there.
Yours was kind of turbulent. I feel like you're missing some of the finer details there, Frosk, but I will allow it.
Like there was that time that in Poland, I got to cast with you. We cast Hong Kong Attitude and H2K.
I remember that tournament.
I remember
Wait,
that tournament real
oh
well.
my
That was the
God,
first
yeah,
time I got
yeah,
cast lunch.
Yeah, I remember it
Oh.
too. I swear.
So
So at
yeah,
that
you go.
tournament, wait, was that the one that I got the final with Dracos? No, Papa Smithy and Pyra got the final. I did a semi-final with Dracos at that tournament, and it was the H2K game, and the analyst desk was backstage. So there was the arena, and
They were
then
like
the
kind of
analyst
to the
desk,
right, weren't they?
and then the caster desk was behind the stage, and you
Yeah.
couldn't see anyone. You were like basically in like a dark
It was
closet.
pitch black, yeah.
But for whatever reason, I don't know if I had too much G fuel or just too much stress, but I had like a mental breakdown in between some of the games, and I was like sobbing. I have no idea what happened. It was just like one of those things where you just like have a freak out, and
Yeah.
Dracos doesn't know what to do. He's just standing next to me. He's like, and the manager, Jacob was his name, I think. He's like bringing me a banana and like Kleenexes and water, and he's trying to get me to calm down. He's like,
Oh, you mean Jacob
he
Harrison?
disappears. And he fucking comes back with Joe Miller, and he's like, I've got Joe Miller. And Joe Miller gives me like a locker room speech. I've never spoken to this guy ever before in my life. Like, I never worked with him. I don't really know who he is. Like, I know who he is, but like, this is my first.
Yeah.
And he's like, if I hadn't, like believed in you, you wouldn't be here. So fucking go get him, team. And I was like, Jesus Christ. 3-minute timer by the time the game starts. I'm like, yeah, let's get into game, guys.
Incredible. So hilariously, that guy, that Jacob that came and gave you a banana and tissues, that was my roommate.
So nice.
Yeah, nicest guy in the world, hilarious guy, one of my best friends. But yeah, so that event, for anyone that's wondering, that was IEM 2017 in Katowice. And I did the other semi-final with Vedius, because me and Vedius had cast way back in the UK scene. Because he was a player in the UK scene, a mid laner that played almost exclusively Katarina.
Shut up.
And then he transitioned to be a caster. Anyway, yeah, no, I remember that event. That was a fucking amazing event.
Does
actually.
that say more
'Cause
about
it was
the
terrible,
UK scene
but-
or Vedius?
I think it says both.
That's
well,
what I want to know.
I will say he wasn't that successful in the UK scene as a player. So I guess that's a minor positive for the UK scene. Yeah, but yeah, no, that was my first ever like proper big event. So that one will always stay up there. So I want to bring the conversation back to like where you guys are at right now, because especially since you're both from America, obviously. What is life like now being in Berlin? Because I've never lived in Berlin, but I've heard that it's kind of a strange place to live and isn't like many other places. Like, how does it compare to where you've lived previously? Like, what's good about Berlin? What's bad about Berlin? How do you like the life in Germany?
Hype it up, Frosk. All you.
Okay. I'm a huge Berlin fan. Berlin, outside of Sydney, Australia, is probably my favorite city that I've ever lived. You are correct that it's a really weird city. It's very international. It's not a traditional German city. I mean, obviously you can go to certain areas, because obviously, like, if you're a modern history fan, there's probably nowhere cooler in the world,
Yeah.
cooler, that you could live than Berlin. But like, I mean, the street art and the graffiti is crazy here. If you're super into that, it has so much history. The museums are popping off. The food, I think, is really amazing. I think it's really inexpensive. It's a super queer-friendly city. It's kind of got this vibe of like, there's nothing that Berlin hasn't seen. Like, you
Quite
could do-
literally.
yeah, you could do nothing to shock this city. So it just doesn't give a fuck. It's like, whatever, you do you. Fuck off. That's fine. And everyone dresses in black. It's got a great had a great club scene. So it's got like a little bit of everything. And I think it's just like one of the greatest cities in the world. And if people like come and they don't like Berlin, I'm like, where the fuck did you go? Did you just like sit in Mitte? Like, how did you not like Berlin? There's literally something for everyone. If you want to just get like tanked all day and fucking ride around the S-Bahn, like, you can do that. If you want to go get fucked up in a club, you can do that. If you want to go into any of the amazing parks that are all over the city. Fun fact, the parks are all over the city because Berlin, unlike other European cities or other major European cities, wasn't rebuilt after World War II because of obviously the Soviets coming in and the Berlin Wall being there. And so it didn't really get rebuilt until like the 90s. Like, there was a ton of like rubble and destruction around. So there's a shit ton of parks in Berlin that are in the shape of buildings because that's what they literally used to be. And because there was no money to fix it, they just put a park there. So you can go like a block in any direction and you'll hit a park no matter what. And it's just like this weird imprint of a building.
That's cool. That's really cool. I
And how do you?
sorry, go on.
Sorry, go on. I was just gonna say, how do you find it with the language and everything? I mean, like I
Super
know
easy.
from being there, yeah, most people spoke English, but I was just curious, like, have you guys started doing the lessons and all that kind of stuff? So, or are you still
Nope.
just okay?
I was supposed to do a German language class and then COVID hit, but I definitely like Ender and I are bad. We should definitely learn German because like while people speak English here,
Mm.
they obviously people will get like agitated if you don't even like try to do any German to them. I speak better Chinese than I do German.
To be fair, you lived it
Das ist
there
nicht
for-
good.
Yeah, anyways, I don't know. I always feel bad. I have a really hard time speaking to people because if I speak in English, I feel bad, and I know I can't speak in German, so it just doesn't happen. As a
Dude, you're
gamer, I'm convinced I can live any. Honestly, like the only like friends that I've made outside of LEC, I've literally met playing basketball. So like I go to like basketball courts and I shoot around, and like there's another person shooting, and they're like, "You want to like one-on-one?" And they just all happen to be American. I don't know why. Like it's not my fault. Like they're the ones coming up to me. So yeah, that happened. But as you can see, the internet not so good. I'm a very blurry man
Right.
apparently. Even though on my screen I look crystal clear.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. But it
So-
was cool. Moving here when you're 19 from America, very cool.
Yeah, and like so because you're from California, right? What's the
Yeah, Los Angeles.
right? So you're from LA, like literally the
Yep.
place that people dream of living, right? So what's the difference, right? Because I personally I absolutely hate LA. Like LA is the worst place in the
Ooh.
world. But
One just taste.
LA is
like as someone who believes in manners, LA is the worst place in the world. No offense to you. I'm just saying like the Americans have a different way of taking it. Like and if you're English, it's really hard over there. I'm just saying from experience. man.
Really?
It's really tough. Nobody says please and thank you. And also they look at you weird when you have good manners. You get judged for having good manners. It's really strange. I found it really difficult.
Are you
to
sure
deal
that's an LA thing and not just like an American thing?
I think it's like more a thing in LA because in Vegas people were a lot chiller. But either way, I'm not just gonna complain about LA. But
I mean,
like
you can. Everyone tells me that I'm an idiot for thinking LA is cool, but I think it's cool.
I think parts of LA is cool. I just didn't. I don't know. Driving an hour and a half every morning and every night, not good. For a 20-minute drive,
Very true.
It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And there's
when
no
I
public
started-
transport.
Yeah, the public transport is terrible. And honestly, like I had to learn how to use a train when I got here. Like it was a weird experience to like get on this train, go this direction, the S9, not the S7, like all of these like that was wild. But yeah, the first like month or two I worked at Riot, I did the hour-and-a-half commute through traffic every morning, which was pure misery. But once you actually like move into LA and if you can get a place near work, like you really stop doing that. Like I was pretty much able to walk anywhere. And to me, the place in LA I lived, like West LA, didn't feel like as much a city as much it felt like kind of like a city suburbs mix. Like it was still apartment buildings, but it wasn't just like really tall buildings stacked next to each other with like restaurants all around. Like you would have to walk to the street with all the restaurants. So I was like 10 minutes away from Sawtell, 10 minutes away. Sawtell's where all the good restaurants are. And then 10 minutes away from Riot campus. So I could get pretty much everywhere. Here, there's just so much stuff around me that I rely on ordering food more than I should. I never leave the
Live
house.
in like the Sawtell of Berlin.
Yes and no.
No,
Because let me tell you, Sawtell has way better food.
Okay,
And
yeah,
it's not even close.
no one is going to deny that LA doesn't have better Korean specifically and Japanese and
food.
Chinese food.
And Chinese food.
But that's for very dark historical reasons. Whereas Berlin obviously has amazing Turkish food, like whole poggers.
Yeah,
True.
very true.
I've appreciated it.
I will say, currywurst, super underrated fast food. I don't know why it's not in anywhere else in the world because
disgusting. What?
it's
Yeah.
The
actually
Berlin doner
incredible,
kebabs are
honestly.
just amazing. They are so
Like
good.
they're okay.
Compared to Dublin, like you get the greasiest, wettest thing that just gets handed to you. It's like I'm a drunk, I don't care, I'm
Look,
gonna eat this. But like
Anytime you use the word
comparatively, it's
wet
just so
for
good.
what you're eating,
It's
it's like not
disgusting.
going.
Look, I wouldn't recommend it. It's not healthy. It's probably going to kill you in like 3 years, but you're drunk and you don't care.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of in the opposite scale of that, where it's like the Berlin kebabs are nice, but they're kind of a bit too, almost posh is the word. Like they're like decorative. They've got like little spruces of salad on top. And if I'm ordering a kebab,
But
I
that's
am
salad, that's
battered,
not
and I just want this like
decoration.
pile of greasy ass meat that I can just consume and then die. That is what I'm looking for when I order
That's
a
Dublin,
kebab.
yeah.
So I don't know. The German kebabs, they're pretty good, but they're not quite the back of some
Look,
horrible
they're
shop
great
in
on a night
Doncaster.
out. I'm never gonna eat a kebab when I'm not coming home from a club.
Ah,
That's how it goes.
they're great in the morning after a night out. Let me
In
tell
the
you.
morning. That was my first kebab experience, 8 a.m.
That's a very reasonable way to do it. So let's we'll move the conversation on from Berlin. I wanted to. In fact, Dagda, do you want to set this one up, because this was more your question? We wanted to ask about kind of like how you guys balance your life with LEC and the other stuff that you've got going on with your life. Dagda, you kind of thought
Yeah.
this was. Do you wanna-
So, like, both myself and Munch have kind of come from backgrounds where, like, we were doing a bunch of different esports titles when you're kind of coming up as a caster, and you guys now are kind of moving into this where you're doing, like, I know for Ender you're doing a bunch of the Valorant stuff, Froskurinn you're doing a bunch of the sim race and stuff and that, and like obviously you've got enough on your plate with League of Legends. Now you're adding these other esports titles into the mix, and you guys are streaming. Like, how do you manage all this moving about when you're trying to balance like both your work and your at home or life, or trying to do whatever you have in your spare time? Because it's difficult enough trying to keep up with League of Legends as a color caster, so trying to add in all those other things just seems mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. Honestly, it's hard to me. There's phases where I'm really good at it and phases where I'm really bad at it. Right now, I'm really bad at it. It usually just comes down to like me setting a schedule, because I think there's like maybe there's like 4 like big things I do in my life right now, which is I play basketball, I play League of Legends / cast it, play Valorant / cast it, and then I like write also on the side. So like when like my best schedule is when I like go out in the morning, get breakfast. While I'm at breakfast, I have a laptop there. I'm writing whatever I'm working on. After that, I go play basketball. I then come home and like stream, and either do like Valorant or League with that. And then any jobs that filter in there too. And if I can keep a regular schedule where it's like it's not even like locked in where I do like an hour of this, an hour of this, an hour of this. It's just I'm going to do all these things
As long
today.
as there's the habit, yeah.
Exactly. Then it's not too bad. But like with lockdown hitting, I'm like not going out to cafes anymore. So I like stopped writing. So I stopped also like playing basketball and stuff like that. So it's been a little bit more difficult. But I think that for me, like keeping up with League is really easy. I think this year I did the least like amount of like prep or like review of my own cast, like anything like this. I did the least of out of like all the time I've been a caster. And I think that now with preseason, now it's getting more complicated. I'll have to put in more time, but I feel like I hit a point where I'm like always going to hit a pretty high bar, and it's like it's hard to like lose your knowledge. I think like you lose touch of like specific matchups and like small micro elements of it. But I think that like you can find a place where you're comfortable with your game knowledge and you don't feel like you need to like hard grind League anymore. Like I hardly played ranked this year. I got like D4 and then chilled.
Frosk, what about you? What's your experience of the balance?
I mean, the honesty of it is that our visa requirements, or my visa requirement, requires that I need to make 20% of my income from a different contractor. So if it was my way, I would only work and focus on Riot, because I'm like a very obsessive person. Like I obsess and focus on one thing. And so
Same.
things like the sim racing stuff with like Nitro Nights, or like some of my other side projects are streaming, or so I can meet my visa requirement. And like Ender said, it's probably the least amount of time that I've then had an opportunity to give to League of Legends and League of Legends casting. And I think that there's still like a lot of growing pains in terms of like the workflow systems, because Riot is now trying to figure out how it interacts with freelance casters, and freelance casters are trying to figure out how they interact with all their other gigs in terms of work-life balance, as well as with League of Legends and Riot. And it's just kind of this weird mixture of things, which is why sometimes you get like really cool products where you have like a Star Wars meme opening that like Ender, Dracos, and I like Ender wrote it, Dracos and I just like showed up. We just like pulled down a curtain rod and just like threw that shit together. We had like no idea what we're doing. Like that shit had zero planning to it. Or you get like situations where things sometimes get missed, or maybe things are a little bit like wonky and people aren't having like their best like on moments. So it definitely like needs refinement. Again, if I could, I would just focus on League of Legends, but it's just frankly not a viable option for me right now.
Well, how do you feel about that transition? Like, are you, because you're so obsessive, do you find that you're then like fully invested in race simming and you're not even looking at League of Legends? And then do you find you're kind of, a lot of the stuff that you've done with League, say from a casting perspective, like how well does that transition across? Because I can imagine sim racing is a very different story from League of Legends.
A little bit.
So the coolest thing about sim racing is, so like I haven't driven a car in 10 years. I sold my car when I went off to college and I have never driven one since. I'm like almost 30 now. So it's been quite a while. And I've never really watched like F1 or NASCAR or the GT series or anything like that. And I had a peripheral, like we know what sim racing is, although I have to call it esports racing. I'm just like, the sim racers don't call it esports racing. And then the sponsor's like, but you better fucking call it esports racing like right now. I'm like, you're just pissing off sim racers. Like they don't care about this shit. I literally told them when I got the job, I was like, you shouldn't hire me for this. Like they hired me because they wanted like an esports host and they're trying to push sim racing into esports. I'm like, why don't you get an actual sim racer and like an actual real world driver? Because sim racing is having its moment right now because all of the races got shut down because of COVID. So everything moved online and you had real racers that were racing in sim races. So you had the sim racers and the real life drivers both on the simulation. It was fucking
so
crazy. Cool. And like the viewership spiked up really high and there was like a lot of interest in it. And I'm like, I'm watching like the 24-hour like Le Mans. I'm like trying to figure everything out. I'm like, okay, this is how this works, and these are like the crazy drivers. But one of the cool things about what Nitro Knights is doing, I know it sounds like such a fucking like sponsorship ad plug, but I actually really do believe this for like all esports. And if sim racing wants to push into that, or one of the biggest issues and why it can't break that endemic level in terms of like sponsorship, because you do have some big teams and some like endemic sponsors from racing that are getting into sim racing, is because it's impossible to track. There's no Leaguepedia for sim racers, or if there is, it's super stripped back and stripped down. So they are trying to create a site and content that's putting together all of these stories, because then you also have all of the different racers, and sim racers like people from the FGC will be in multiple different categories. Like not everyone specializes in like iRacing or F1 2020. They'll do like F1 and GT and AC and all of the different races, and then it's like impossible to find like the narrative thread. You can't be like, this guy when he was 13 years old started playing LeBlanc, he was undefeated on the champion. Like it just doesn't. And then when you don't have those narratives, then it's harder, I think, to take it seriously as a sport. And then they're already dealing with the prejudice of sitting at a video game, despite the fact that the real racers train on a lot of what the fucking sim racers are driving on, and the technique's the same. Plus the sim racers are faster. Sorry guys, they're not afraid that they're gonna fucking break
Are they
their
faster
neck
on a
when they're
real track
pushing
though?
around.
Are they faster on a real track?
It takes time. They've only done so I've interviewed 3 what we call hybrid racers, which will be real racers and sim racers, and James Baldwin and Joshua Rogers are probably the fastest. And there is a definite correlation. Like it takes some time getting off of a sim rig onto a real racetrack, but there is like transferable skills that if you gave these guys time, they could be fast. But obviously the sim racers are faster than the real racers because again, they're not afraid that they're gonna fucking like get their face across across pavement. They're like, I'm pushing it.
Yeah. I'm not gonna try too hard to get into the racing conversation. I'm not gonna pretend like I'm an expert on this, but I watched Top Gear for a lot of years, and I've like had a peripheral interest in that. I've got a lot of friends that follow racing, and one of the big things that people always say separates like the really, really great racers from the good racers is that it's like they don't give a shit. It's like, if I die here today, it was worth it for the medal kind of thing. And so that kind of mentality and skill set is not something that is built up doing anything except racing on the track, right? So you have to
That's
wonder.
actually my mindset when I cast games.
If I die today, then
I'm going down with double tier Ezreal. I've never seen it before.
So I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I know anything about sim racing.
I mean, I've never even driven a car, so I'm way out of my depth here.
I personally believe I'm a really good driver, but I'm obviously fairly biased towards myself.
I'll give you guys a tip so you can sound really cool to like any race fan.
Yeah, do it.
Senna. Everyone knows Senna, yeah? Even if you don't know racing, you probably know that name. He was really famous for multiple reasons, but what he used to do is when he would take turns, he would smash his clutch, and you could actually listen to the car. You'd hear it going like,
Yeah.
and it's because he learned on a kart where when you were smashing your clutch, it would like open the fuck if I know like car terminology. It would basically like open it up so the gasoline could get in, and think of it like you get like a boost. He's like fucking power boosting around turns.
He's like flooding it basically.
I've played Need for Speed. He is Nost.
But in F1, the engines
similar. Quite the same.
That's it. The engines meant that technique really didn't make any sort of difference, but because it was such a leftover habit, it was like the signature thing about when he would go around turns in his car. So there you go. Now you can have that fun fact, and
interesting.
Who knows? You'll win a pub trivia with it one day.
Yeah, maybe.
Perfect. Yeah.
Maybe we'll see. I've not been to a pub quiz in a long while because of fucking COVID. Anyway, so I'm gonna move the conversation on slightly. We wanted to ask you guys a little bit about branding, which is a bit of a weird topic, and it's a kind of vague topic as well. But I feel like with you two specifically, you guys are really, really great examples of two of the like really strong brands within esports, and I think that there is some exceptionally strong brands across the esports scene, especially outside of League of Legends. But I think within League of Legends, you guys have two of the stronger brands within League of Legends. And I'll go to you first, Ender, since Frosk, you were just talking to us about the sim racing. But Ender, obviously, you kind of have built your brand over the course of like, I guess the last 2 years, but this year especially, it's like really, really spiked. Do you want to speak to kind of how much of that was intentional? Like, was that something that you were like, okay, Weird Champ's a thing, let's fucking run with this baby? Or like, what happened? Like, where did it all come from? Like, how much did you kind of direct it, and how much of it was like natural growth?
Yeah, so I would say a lot of it was reactionary, but still very intentional. There's been like, basically whenever there's like a joke about me, I will lean into it as hard as possible. And like, that's just sort of been my thing. Like the Weird Champ as like the specific example, that was used in Spring Split as a way to flame me, right? Like Weird Champ is technically not a nice thing to, pop up when someone comes on screen. It's like cringe or like haha, like any of those things. But I basically just took it and made it my own thing and was like, hey, now if people type this, they're not flaming me. They're like saying hi pretty much, and that's like the way I interpreted it. So it turned into, I don't know what percentage of people are Weird Champing because they're a fan of me and they know that's my thing, or they're flaming me. But in my mind, they are now all my fans. And I just like weaponize it that way.
You could say they're only fans.
They're only fans. There you go. Exactly. And maybe a link soon. No. But yeah, no, like that was like the whole idea right there was you take any flame that people are throwing your way and then you turn it into like you own it. Like I doubled down on like the earring thing, like that sort of stuff. So it was like whatever either bothers people or people notice, I was like, okay, that like speaks to them and we're gonna blow that up out of proportion. And then there were a few other things I think that I definitely tried to like double down on. One was like writing the like comedic content for the LEC and a lot of like the cold opens. And by writing those things, I ended up being in a lot of them. So I just like got a ton of like exposure in that way. And people like identified like, oh, like the Star Wars skit, that's me. LEC update, that's me and Shocks, So I felt like through those things, I could show off more personality than I can in casts, because if you listen to my casts now, they are very bland. In Spring Split, I tried doing like the kind of like pessimistic tone and being like very like critical, analytical, and and like making jokes and stuff, and people didn't like it. I still think it was some of my best work, but we'll ignore that. And it was like, okay, that didn't work, so I started casting with Quickshot and made it as bland as possible. But it was about like picking and choosing the elements that you can like really make your own thing, whether it's like, oh, in cast I'm like the jungle pathing expert and that sort of thing, and identifying those key areas and knowing what you want people to be saying about you. And for me, that was like jungle pathing, funny, weird champ, boom, and we got that.
Fair enough.
Just slightly on an off topic. I know you're kind of talking about writing this kind of the opening segments and stuff like that. Is that what you write in your spare time as well, or because that was just something I was curious about? Like, what kind of stuff do you write in your spare time?
Both. Or both. I say that and other things. So I wrote like LEC update. I would say probably about like 50 to 60%, or 50% of the cold opens. I would say like I wrote on my own or as a lead writer, and then I like had input in a lot of the other ones. On my own, I have a fully complete sitcom that we may do a reading of on stream at some point. That's absolutely ballin'. There's another one I want to write there. And then I'm writing more of like, I'm like basically writing like TV or like movie scripts pretty much.
Oh,
Nice.
cool.
Well, if you need a few actors, me and Munch are terrible.
Hey.
I'm willing to jump in.
I love it.
You should see me wistfully looking at Morgan on the WE poster. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, so over on the other side of things, Froskurinn, your brand has obviously been a much like more of a slow burner, but you've built an incredibly strong brand over the years, right? Like I think that you're one of the most recognizable faces within esports talent. How much of that was like I am going to be this person, I am going to be this image of what people will believe? How much of that is just this is just who you are and this is how you act kind of thing? Like, is there a level of intention there with the way that this brand has been crafted, or would you say that it's just true to who you are?
Probably a mixture of both. I think it should definitely be a bit more intentional now. Now I'm pretty much like, I kind of got to the point where I feel relatively safe with like my job security. So now I'm a bit of a loose cannon, I would say. And I'll kind of shoot first, ask questions later. So obviously like my beginnings, I guess, as a brand is I started like in the community itself. I was part of, Reddit and the forum communities. I wanted to like build a product that was very grassroots. I didn't come in from a traditional like PR or broadcasting or that type of background. I was like a fan or a nerd who became a fan who then became like a broadcaster and got trained up that way. It obviously like it sits like on the gender sexuality lines where that's always going to be like a marketable thing. My opinion is, and it always will be, that you have to meet like everyone talks about like quotas with like a dirty word or like affirmative action and that type of shit. And I'm not going to like pretend that that doesn't help, but you have to meet like a qualification bar. Like if two people are of the exact same skill, then yeah, I will have an advantage being a woman when we're both equal skill. But the thing is that people always try to like take away the skill thing and be like, she only gets advantage because she's a woman, because she's gay. They can't do anything. It's like, no, motherfucker. I had to try for years. I worked really hard. Like, fuck off. No. In terms of like conscious things that I do with my brand, I would say really a polarizing figure. I was very much not liked for a very long time, and I think it swings really rapidly, and it's sad because I had my big fallout with Reddit over the semifinals, the G2 match, which was like kind of a clusterfuck. It was like a week before. People were pissed off because the Jackie Love comment. I don't know if you guys like followed that, but like some dude has it really out for me because I was like, I don't think Jackie Love's as great as some of the greatest ADCs to come out of the LPL, which I was right, motherfucker.
Sidebar. There was a Reddit thread. There was a Reddit thread a week after finals that was like, Frosk was right about Jackie Love. He really isn't at the level of all the LPL greats.
I think anyone who kind of watched LPL would kind of agree with you. Like, there were some dodgy fucking moments in there.
Yeah.
But this dude, he like had and you can tell that I'm still salty about it, and that's fine. Like if that gets him off and I'm like still salty about it, I'm still salty about it because I was like, get a fucking life. What are you doing? He's like combing through like year-old Reddit comments like, I got this bitch now. And people like see him link to something and they think it's a takedown. When if they actually clicked on the link and read, it was like really well worded, like very long response,
Yeah.
super reasonable and tame, but no one read it because they hate me and they're just like, fuck this bitch, I'm on. And I was like, what the And then like a week before the semifinal, then I announced, then there's like a hate thread, then we do the semifinal, and like, was it the greatest semifinal? No. I'll take that one on the chin. It was not my best performance. Was it as bad as the 6 Reddit threads and thousands of hate mail that I got? Fuck no, you motherfuckers. You were galvanized because still salty, but it's fine.
This
So
is
how
what we
did
call doubling down, folks.
Dude, I'm tripling down at this one. I've combed through that cast like so clearly. I'm like, this wasn't a terrible cast. It was like whatever. And for a semifinal, then you can like have the conversation about like context. But oh my god, people just wanted to like burn me at the stake. But a few years ago, I actually believe right before Worlds, can't remember which one it was. It might have been 2016 or 2017. I knew that it was going to be like my first Worlds, and so I made a Reddit post after Worlds was announced, and I was like looking for feedback. And people still quote this sometimes. And I was sitting next to my boss, Jake Spawn Tiberia at the time, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I looked over at him. I was like, "What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a Reddit post asking for feedback. I'm not going to read any of it. I don't give a fuck what these people say. They don't know anything about my job. You taught me my job. But they don't actually watch me. They don't listen to me. And when I go to Worlds, they're finally going to be forced to listen to me, and they're going to realize how much better I've gotten, and they're going to think that they had something to do with it, and that's going to make them like me more." And it did. It worked. It absolutely worked. And that is my great reveal. I will reveal it now. That was
Oh
so
my
conscious
God.
and deliberate. And for years afterwards, when people were high on me, they're like, "I really respect Frost. She like came to us in front." I don't give a fuck about your guys' opinions. You don't know what you're talking about. How did I get my job? I had to have an interview with Jat and Deficio. If you think you know more than Jat and Deficio to say to hire me, get my job. Take it. Come at me. And now you can see the point of what I'm at.
Yeah, I respect it. I respect it big time. Jeez.
So how did you try and like deal with that then? Because obviously that's a lot to just be swung in your face at once. Like, do you just kind of zone away from social media for a while, or like how do you actually just
What kind of
write
answer do you want here?
whatever you're
Well,
feeling?
yeah,
like, whatever.
you lead the way on this one.
Okay. If you don't want to talk about it, that's cool as well.
No,
Like,
super open,
yeah.
but sometimes like I can't read people very well, and so I can just like fucking push in, and then people sit there like, "Oh," and they just like drink.
Just imagine we're at the pub and you're having a nice pint
Yeah,
of water,
this is-
and we're just chilling and
Okay,
getting
fair.
hydrated.
I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder this year, and that has like a crazy stigma. And so I went like super deep into therapy. Last year was actually really rough. Like last year, I think my casting was actual dog shite because I was so depressed. Like I was right, like very real serious talk, like right there on the line of like suicide, and I needed to get help, so I went to therapy. I got onto medication. I got like a full diagnosis. I'm doing much better now, and like I feel like my growth with Dracos has been mostly because of like self-care and taking care of like my mental health. And I constantly have this battle of like, I'm probably not in the best position. Like I came into League of Legends because I was such a fan of these players and like watching these players grow up and I used to be known as like a crazy like narrative caster. Like that was my favorite thing, is like to get like the big one-liners and just like tell the stories of the players and like really learn about them, because that's what I fucking cared about. I hate this job in terms of the brand and the persona and being the ambassador and dealing with all of that. And like now, after like the whole semifinal debacle, I had to like completely remove it. Like I got about 50 different emails of like people going through like my work email just calling me like the most awful shit. And like that's completely aside from like all the shit that I got blown
Really?
up on Twitter
hell.
and Reddit and Instagram. Like Dracos and I couldn't even open our phones. We're like, well, I guess that's the end of the year for us, and just like set it down. And I was like really struggling last year, and this year I think was really up and down. I switched onto I don't know if you've ever taken antidepressants, but that shit will fuck you up. And it's like it's wild. You can get like really high or really low. And so there's like I remember I was casting with Dracos and I was trying to figure out the time to take like my pill, and it's like 4 hours after you take the pill, and it kicked in right in the middle of one of our, I think it was like week 7 games, and I'm drawing on the telestrator and I like just start drawing random circles. I'll try to go back and find rewind the game and like blink it. It was at that moment I was like, oh no, where will you be when the drugs kick in?
Did you say that on cast or? Okay.
Draco's just looking at me like, what the f-? And I'm like,
It's like you're like halfway through Jordan's like record scratch. You're probably wondering how I got here.
I'm not sure. If you go back, someone will probably dig it up. There's like 6 circles on the screen at one time, and I think Draco says something like, "That's enough Telestrator for today."
I can respect it. Damn, yeah,
But
that's really rough. Yeah.
But
And
yeah, in all honesty, after the G2 semifinal thing, I was like, not the greatest cast, but holy fuck, like I was in such a dark place, like mentally, and then I feel like I couldn't say anything about it. I said something about it, I think last week, but you can't really say anything about it during the event because you're like, I
Yeah.
can't take away from Worlds at all, which I don't know, it's kind of fucked, but like not trying to make excuses, but I will say that I wasn't in probably top performance there, guys.
Yeah, I do
I think
definitely
that's
think it goes into a conversation as well of like, the industry that we're in is very rapidly to an extent becoming showbiz, right? Where this is television, and like there's an extent of, as you're literally saying towards the end there, like the show must go on, right? You're not trying to detract away from the show and everything, but at the same time, you do have to think about yourself and you have to look after yourself. So it's definitely a difficult balance to strike, and I definitely don't envy I definitely think that you got more than your fair share of hate, not even just recently, like over the course of your career. I think it's.
I mean, I think we all do. There's always like, the new face that comes in and like people just hate it because it's like new. It's why I'm really happy with what you guys are doing in the LPL right now, because it's probably the most positive reception that I've ever seen for the LPL broadcast. I watch you guys' broadcast a lot. You guys are doing, I don't know if I've ever said it to you guys, but you guys are doing like a really fucking great job. So
Thank you.
please continue, because it's like, actually, it's the only broadcast I watch outside of the LEC. So please continue to make a good product for me to consume, because I don't want to watch shit.
Just on
Thank
that, I just want to say I know all the lads as well. Like massive shout out to you and a thank you as well, Frost, because I know you've been super positive and supportive of us. So I know all the lads are super appreciative of you. So just wanted to get the chance to say that to you as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I spoke about this on social media, but just to like make it like really clear, because there was like so many questions about why LPL doesn't have a lot of representatives, and obviously there's like technical limitations that like go into it. From my experience, like working on the LPL, it's just because no one knows that LPL casters really exist. In my experience, when I was there, I won't speak for you guys, just my experience. So Riot can't get mad. They just the people who are making decisions are they don't have the time to go and watch your guys' cast, because the time zones aren't great. There's a shit ton to go through. It doesn't get a ton of traction in the Western audience, so they rely on educated voices who do watch that, which tends to be like a couple of people. And once they have their people, they sit on them, and it's because that those people are talented enough that they don't really have to reach outside of it. But it does mean that we're constantly falling into the cycle where super talented casters, and like in my casting career, I always learned the most and grew the most when I was at an international event, because you're working at like such a bigger broadcast and you're around so many different people. It is such a huge barrier to entry, and kind of like going to the next level as a caster to get to work on those events. And I think it, in my personal opinion, is super fucked when we don't get more of our I don't want to call you guys B tier casters, because I think it's just like such a dirty word, but like more of the casting family like involved, and like more voices in there. So I will try to advocate for you guys harder. I think that's what it always comes down to. It's just like more advocates, but I don't think it has anything to do with your guys' quality of casting. It is simply like an eyes on you, and unfortunately like such limited places for such a very stacked roster.
Well, thank you. I appreciate all the kind words,
Appreciate
of
it, yeah.
course. I do think that there's a conversation there that I don't really want to delve into right now, but there's a huge part of the conversation that I think, obviously there was like a couple of Reddit threads about LPL casters not being involved and all that kind of conversation. There is an extra factor there of like, there can only be so many casters. And I've worked as a producer, and I know if I'm running a show and I'm making a decision on who I want at my show, I want the people that I know are going to do a fucking awesome job, and the people that are going to bring in the most viewership and please the most viewers, right? And if I'm producing worlds and there's these 4 guys that have basically just started casting, as far as I know, and I've got all of these guys at LEC and LCS and LCK that everyone already knows that have hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to hire those guys because I don't have any budgetary worries. So like that, just to add devil's advocate in there to argue against my own case. But I don't want to really get into that conversation too much because I think
Munch,
that's...
if you could shut up, actually, please.
Yeah.
We're trying to get.
I'm just trying to explain that there is more to it than just like who is a good caster and who's not a good caster.
I totally agree with you. It's always going to be like nuance, and there's like very easy arguments of like other way, like brand size and time zones and work
Even just
familiarity.
the logistics of everything.
Brand size is my least favorite
I
argument.
hate that one.
Yeah.
Well, I am almost at 3,000 followers, so I'm skyrocketing.
Killed Ender.
Where did he go? We'd started talking about brand size and he ran away.
It's just like I'm
Oh
not
no.
verified.
Wait, I just DC'd.
No, the overlay's
Right
the
now
wrong
I'm
way
in there.
around now. Oh, shit.
Oh, don't change
Oh,
it.
it's okay. We're
great.
bringing them back.
I'm coming
It
back.
fixed itself. Oh, thank God. That's just saved me like 10 minutes of bucking around. All right, so I feel like we've kind of excluded you for a little bit there, Ender.
I probably could have just disabled video this whole time, and that would have fixed my connection. Like if I disabled all of
Still
your
look like a
videos.
cactus, so
Oh yeah,
Hold
you could
on.
disable
Oh,
our
got a
videos.
strategy.
Yeah, to improve
You are slowly but surely
the
becoming
net.
clearer.
While you figure out your strategy, I do want to pivot that original question that was a bounce off of Frost talking about the semifinals and things over towards you as well, Ender, because actually, especially last year, as you mentioned before, you got a ton of hate when you first came into the LEC. Like, what was your... Were you similar to Frosk, where did you have like coping mechanisms? Did it not bother you that much? Like, how did you deal with the amount of hate that was being thrown at you when you first got into the LEC?
Yeah, well, it was actually really weird for me because I felt like in my very first split, I received almost no hate. There was like not actually a lot of recognition that I existed.
Yeah.
Like, because
I know that
2018
feeling.
summer was my first split, and I was just kind of invisible. Like the only hate comments were like, "His pants are too big." That was it. I was like,
Hey,
all right.
in terms of hate, that's pretty good.
So to me, I'm like, okay, I guess I'm good, and it can only get better. And then at the start of 2019, it took a pretty big dip. And for me though, I feel like I have always been one to like take criticism, anything like that, like very easy. Like I don't really care. Like I'll go on Reddit all the time and like read hate, and it doesn't really affect me. Every like few months it'll like pile up, and like real life stuff could be happening, and like when it all adds up, that's when it can like really hit me hard, and then it's like pit of despair for a few days. But for me, I feel like I can get into those threads sort of no problem, and it's the same idea of like I can deflect it really easily, like the weird champ thing, I make it my own, or I see criticism and it's like a lot of it is just baseless, and it's like I hate you and there's no reason why, and I'm like, okay, if there's no reason why, there's nothing I need to change, so whatever. And then like very rarely you'll see like a trend of something. Like for me, it was like my breathing was something that a lot of people noticed, and I like just worked on that.
Breathing.
Yeah, like no, it's sort of the way I talk, because I project very loudly with my voice, and what I'll do is I'll talk, and I'll take quick like breath like that, and it's kind of loud, and it would pick up on mic. Yeah. So like that was the thing that I like changed based off of like Reddit feedback. But for me, I largely don't care that much, and can handle it all right.
Fair enough. Well, I want to shift the conversation slightly now to a slightly less dramatic topic, a slightly less like I don't know, a bit more of an optimistic topic. I want to bring it back to League of Legends a little bit and talk about preseason, if that's all right with you guys, because fucking hell, what a preseason! I want to bring up a weird concept and just start the conversation here. In that, first off, the preseason changes are so dramatic in the size difference between different preseasons. Like the Elemental Drakes leading into Elder Dragon was season 8, if I'm not mistaken, and then season 9 was like alcoves. And that was it. And then season 10, we're like, all right, well, we're literally taking half of the game that you've known for 10 years and replacing it entirely, and the other half we're reworking. And I had a conversation with someone earlier on today where we kind of toyed with the idea of like, what if you did this with the champions and you replaced like a third of the champions, some of the outdated ones or whatever? It would like not be the same game at all, right? It would be a totally different game at that point, and it would be very difficult for people to be able to play. I feel like there's an extent to which that is kind of what has happened with the items, because like I've played this game for 9 years or something at this point, and like the whole time I could play Corki, I could build Triforce, I could build an Infinity Edge, I could build a Phantom Dancer, and I'd be pretty okay, right? Like, is Corki always meta? No. Are those always the best items on Corki? No. But are they reasonable items on Corki? Yes. You can't necessarily do that anymore. And so from a casual player perspective, this update could be really brutal to a lot of the like peripheral League of Legends players being able to continue playing League of Legends. Like if I'm a super casual player and everything's changed completely, and the few things that I did know, I don't know anymore, I might just give up. Like, where do you guys sit on how dramatic of a change this is? And do you think that it's a necessary change? Do you think it's a good change? Do you think positives and negatives? Like, where are you guys at with that? Because I'm kind of still really torn. I like some of the changes, but I also feel like it's really difficult to even know where to start with this.
Yeah, so I'd say day one reactions, like I'm not like ready to say is it a good change, is it a bad change. Like I am a big believer in the team that works on the design of League of Legends. I worked with them. I'm biased, whatever, but they're all very smart people and have very like they think about the game in a very good way. I think it's actually very good, no matter how much hate they get. I think I should make a podcast, and I don't steal my thing. Working on it. But basically, I think that super casual players, not super concerned about. If you actually look at the stats, there's an incredibly high amount of players that just build recommended items in that order. Like the large majority of the player base only do recommended items, and they overhauled recommended items. Like it's better now. So I actually think the super casual player just clicks whatever item they're supposed to buy. The same way, if you were to go try a MOBA, any other MOBA out right now, you would instantly buy all the recommended items, right? Because you have no idea what any of them do. You would just buy whatever it tells you to. The majority of players do that. So they're actually not in any sort of concern. And I think that
the pros that are
it's the pros that have to crunch and come up with this. Now, I think that right now it's information overload, and we've never experienced this before, because like even with like new runes coming into the game, you usually had like one choice you thought about, and that was your keystone rune, or is like your chief mastery, like any of those, like that was going to be important. And the other things that came underneath it, like there were better ones, there were worse ones, but they were stats. And the only thing that actually like even remotely changed your playstyle was the first one. The new items all dropping at the same time is going to be really, really hard to adapt to quickly and figure out what is best. But in 2 months, every character will have the best items. Like it'll be the same thing where everyone has their go-to builds. You know pretty much all the situations, and there will be guides, and you'll see what the pros are building. It'll be very natural to everyone in 2 months, and that's why I think like this change is good. And the other thing is, with item overhauls, they've only ever done it one class at a time, which means that the assassin class got like reworked, and you saw like the characters changed and the item changed. Tanks got new items, AD carries got their item rework in 2018. Like it's happened class by class by class, but that comes with the restriction of you put these items into the game and then you have to balance them relative to everything else that already exists. And it's very clear that Riot wants to fundamentally change some of the roles in the game. For example, you look at a ton of the fighter items. They put a shit ton of movement speed on these items. Assassin items have a lot of like mobility put onto. Like you have the dash one, you have the invisibility one on Duskblade. AD carry items now have their dash ability, have their super shield ability. So it's about giving more outplay potential and counter options within builds, which they're allowed to do because they're changing every single class at the same time. They can figure out what is the threshold or what is the what's the status quo, and they can balance everything to that. They can set that now as opposed to reacting to whatever has already existed in the game. So I think it's the only way they could have gone with like actually meeting their goals of multiple class item overhauls is to hit everything at the same time.
So I guess what you're saying is that they're trying to essentially think like, okay, what do AD carries want? Let's see if we can give them that in items. What do bruisers want? Let's see if we can give them that, and like try and do that with each role of like what would level this role up? Let's do that at the same time so that it's not super oppressive to everyone else.
Exactly, because as people get better and better about the game, the roles and classes get so much more binary. AD carry is the stupidest thing to ever exist. Their right clicks are a spell with a cooldown of half a second, and it's point and click. Right? It's so ridiculous that class exists. There is so little skill expression there other than your positioning and not getting one shot. So little. It's hilarious. So what do?
They used to be more
power. Yeah, but
people were worse in the game.
They're making your class better because what do? They take power out of your no skill button, which is your right click, pew, 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 right?
That's how I express it.
No, you don't. That's how you express stats. That's not skill. Stats do not.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with not needing to be skilled.
They give you a dash ability. They give you movement speed abilities. They're giving you outplay potential, and it makes your class not binary.
I'm fucking playing Valorant and League of Legends. I'm just here to click heads.
The thing is, in Valorant, clicking heads takes skill. It just doesn't in League of Legends. You just play Caitlyn.
If Mark Merrill called me up on the phone tomorrow and you said you are in charge of like you are the lead balance like philosopher, we'll call him on League of Legends, I would delete AD carry from the game. I would remove that shit in a heartbeat. Get that the hell out of here. All AD carries should play like Ezreal or like Lucian. I'll give him the double. Like that's cool. Like it should be spell slinger AD carries with mages in the bot lane, bruisers in the bot lane. That shit would be sick. But there's way too many players that love their little right click and they ruin the game for everyone else.
Personally attacked?
Yeah,
that's right. Jackie Love sucks.
I'm not gonna lie. I hovered the remove from group button while you were saying that. I was this close. To be fair, I have actually swapped. I'm Juggernaut. Go on, Dagda.
I was gonna say, to be a little bit more positive, it's kind of like this is today, at least from playing it, like it's giving me a feeling that I haven't had in a long time playing League of Legends. It's just that like, holy shit, this is busted, or holy shit, this is the worst decision I've ever made. Like, not actually knowing what it is. Like, I remember one of my fondest memories is like coming into the game and I was playing bot lane against the Blitzcrank. And I remember myself and one of the Dutch lads that I'm good friends with were playing, and I was like, this is unbeatable. He pulls me under the tower and I'm fucking dead. How do I play against this? There's no counterplay. And like, I haven't felt that in so long.
Yeah.
And now coming back into playing today, I actually was kind of like, oh, well, if I put Riftmaker on this guy, or I do that with this thing, like all these different combinations, and it was really cool to just kind of go. And I know we were talking a little bit about Chakrez as well, who's like tweeting constantly about like Titanic Hydra Katarina is now a thing. And I'm like, that sounds so stupid. I want to have a look and play it. Like, I haven't had that feeling for so long playing League. And it's nice now to get that feeling again of just like, holy shit, this is so cool that I get to try all these wonderful things.
That like doughy-eyed newness. It feels to me like, do you know, something I noticed earlier today when I was playing was the changed icons at the same time as changed items is really, really important, because I realized I opened the shop and I was like, I don't know what the fuck anything is, right? Which obviously you can look at that in a negative way, but you can also think of it like, it felt to me like, you know, when you quit World of Warcraft, but you're still an addict, so you start a different MMO, right? And you're like, what the fuck does any of this do? And you've been playing hardcore World of Warcraft. This may get a little specific here. You've been playing hardcore World of Warcraft for 3 years at this point. You've been like raiding hardcore permanently. You've been like playing PvP and shit. You know everything there is to know about World of Warcraft. Then you play this new MMO and nothing makes sense and you don't know what anything does. And you suddenly remember how to enjoy a game, like Dagda says, because you don't know, and you gradually figure it out, and you're like, holy shit, this is busted as fuck. Holy shit, this is busted as fuck. And you discover things. But I think if the icons had stayed the same as before, like Deathcap, for example, right? The item has changed a bit, but it's still fundamentally Deathcap. Even with this even with that, like the fact that it has a new picture means that you have to go hover on it and figure out what the new version of Deathcap is. So it's kind of like, even if you have read everything, it still feels like there's a little bit something new there. There's something to discover. And it feels, you do get that kind of childish joy of figuring it all out again, which is, I'm just glad that they disabled ranked for it, you know? That ranked doesn't actually matter during preseason, because it's childish joy now. If it was in ranked, not childish joy.
We were playing ranked flex earlier today.
We were just giving away
yeah,
LP.
but it's not real ranked, right? It's not real ranked.
It does affect your MMR, just less so.
Hey, we're leaving the country. We don't mind.
Yeah,
fair. Honestly, so
more LPT.
Real talk here. I think that Riot actually did the biggest mistake Riot made is that they dropped everything at the same time. Now, I think you should drop all the items at the same time. Do the entire item rework right now, today. But what I would do is I would have done it in 3 stages. So today I would drop I would, do all the same item changes they made, but I would actually not change the icons of the old items yet. So I would leave the old items that still exist, their icons, as the ones in the shop, because like people need a reference point, and like that's just like a good way to like teach people the system is like, these are the normal ones. Now you can play around with your new toys. I would leave the UI off. I would keep the old UI, because the hardest thing for me today was
the UI.
It was navigating both brand new items and the UI. And I just found myself sitting in base for 30 plus seconds because I couldn't find
the trinket
items I need. I couldn't find the trinket. I couldn't find potions. I walked out of base with a cull and no pot because I couldn't find potions. But it's like you gave people way too many different things to think about. If you did new items this week, next week you drop the item icons for the old ones, right? You update those, and the week after that you release the UI. Then the players that have been playing this whole time, they understand what the good items are, and now they can use the new shopping client, and it'll be fun.
Here's the thing though. This is actually the 5-head play. Reddit can't complain about everything if you drop it all at the same time. They'll forget to complain about some of the stuff. They'll get used to the new shop because they're busy complaining about the new items. So you can just match it all up. It's just a way to dodge hate. Sorry, Frosk. What's your take on it? Because I feel like you've
I have
not had an opportunity to jump in here. I've not had anything intelligent to offer either. So unintelligent discussion is perfectly welcome.
Ender's always going to be like the go-to person for talking about like balance. I always think he has like such an eloquent way of putting it, but I only look at patches as soon as they're live in pro play. I spam. This is how I play ranked. I'm like, okay, I'm really gonna climb. I'm gonna take it seriously. And then 2 hours later, I'm like, fuck it, I'm locking in Fiddlesticks bottom. Let's go. I'm just running it down. I love running it down. It is my favorite thing to do.
Reported.
I am all about. Today I played basically every single 80 carry in like our 6 games that we played as Caster Flex. We were just like.
I saw your cogmore.
Yeah. Hey, I played lane phase fine.
You got a lot of CS with that passive, I have to admit.
I was maximizing my passive. Is it really maximizing Kogma's kit if you don't die on it? Because I just wanted to see it, but fucking I love that shit. I love just taking 80 carries and building stupid shit on them. I love getting bored and just being like, fucking I'm bored, let's go in. And then you just like, everyone feeds, like, I guess we're through the game. I'm like, okay, let's do it again, run it back.
You've reminded me of something there where you said, fuck it, I'm bored, let's go in. There's a screenshot of Lou Mao's in-game communications where it's like, I'm bored, can we fight now? It's like, that's the smart passive team from LPL. That's the smartest team of the LPL. Their shotgunner is like, I'm bored, can we fight? Sorry, just random thing.
Watching Crisp in that NEST game where he was playing the set, I'm like, this motherfucker's bored right now. He's like, he's running around. He's like, I should just be zoning control and just like taking care of space and like moving my vision line. But he's like, fuck it, all this guy. And I'm like, Crisp.
I'm not gonna lie. I don't feel like the teams are taking NEST that seriously. I've watched a lot of NEST at this point. I'm not convinced that they're super interesting.
Honest, they don't take the regular season games that seriously either.
That's true. But yeah, so yeah, unless anyone else has anything to add on the preseason, I feel like we're still very much at the precipice of this. So I don't want to I'm not gonna try and ask analytical questions from you
The
guys.
only thing is, I'm just terrified because I know that LPL starts first, and I'm just like, I gotta
God.
introduce this shit. I was like,
And
I have no fucking clue. And like, I can't even go. Oh yeah, look, I'm gonna watch the NA lads or you guys in LEC work it out first, and I'll just write notes in the background. I'm like, fuck me, I gotta deal with this.
I'm just gonna learn the
only that-
names of the items and then just throw you under the bus. What does Kraken Slay do
Yeah.
again, Dagda?
Yeah,
But
stuff.
it's also right before Chinese New Year. So not only do you get like
Yeah.
the items first and like new rosters, new teams, new items, but those motherfuckers don't care. They're like,
Yep.
I've got 2.5 weeks just to run this right now. Let's go. The casters are like, yeah, they should be doing this. The teams do something completely different. The casters like, I am correct. Really, I am.
I swear I know what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, you're
I
not
have
wrong.
one final message to chat about preseason and about new changes in general.
Go.
Don't be day one reaction Andes, okay? I don't want to see strong opinions out there on the internet. You can have
Okay.
opinions. Opinions are great, but they better be some weak
I see.
ass opinions, okay? That's what I'm saying. Like, you can have your opinion, but you better be ready to change your mind in an instant, okay? And I don't want you going out talking about a new item like it's the most broken thing you've ever seen. It's like, my experience was it was really broken, but not like, oh my God, Riot, please nerf. Like, get some more time on the patch before you start yelling into the void of what's good, what's bad, what Riot has ruined, what they haven't. Just please stop.
Ender, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So what do you think about Samira?
It's been more than one day, I will say.
She's undertuned.
Oh, he said it. He said it. I don't believe you.
Look up the
Dab,
win rates.
unironically.
He doesn't even lie.
I
don't
think
know.
just bouncing off Ender's point, like I think it's gonna take a lot of getting used to as well. Like say like the Duskblade stuff. I was playing against the Kane earlier on today, and everyone was like, he used his ult, and it's just he'd killed someone and gone invisible. Like it just takes some time to get used to it. So like I think once people start to get used to what the items do and like how to actually play against them, it'll all make a lot more sense rather than just like completely misinterpreting what's going on and then saying it's fucking busted when you were just being an idiot.
I will say, weirdly, in the defense of people on Reddit, there is an extent to which complaining on a public forum about something that just fucked you in solo queue is incredibly therapeutic. And everyone else that's upvoting that is also just getting that cathartic click of like, yeah, fuck this shit, man. I also just died to this Katarina that's now building AD, apparently. Fuck this game. Or I also I got one shot by a Shaco that had a Duskblade, and he killed me with his E that scales only off of AP, as far as I know. But he still did like 350 damage with his E, so fuck only knows what's happening in this game. I could have made a Reddit thread. I chose not to, just for you, Ender. Just for you.
Oh,
I didn't make that
appreciate
Reddit
you.
thread.
I'm going to be honest. It's usually not Reddit that tilts me first. It's usually other casters. Like today, I was watching Medic stream.
He said it just tilted you.
No. Here's the thing.
Here we
he
go.
dies to an Alawi with 17 kills. And he starts talking about the items. I'm like, have you not seen an Alawi for the last 5 years with 17 kills? It kills literally everything it sees. The
My
same thing
favorite-
happened. There was a Caitlyn that did the same thing. A Katarina that did the same. It's like, it's not the items. It's just that they're 5 levels over you with a full build at 24 minutes.
No,
But it was the
This-
items that got them to that point. Go on, Frosk.
This is how I feel when Azael, and it was somehow considered controversial when Azael came out and he was like, basically the most wet take ever, which was, guys, I don't think all of the conversation about items really has that much of a breakdown on what happens in these games, which I 100% agree with.
True.
Teams do not win and lose by how they build fucking items. That's just the
Except
easiest thing
very
to
fringe
criticize.
cases, yeah.
Oh, it's just super French cases.
Yeah.
You know why they lose? Because they get bored and they run it down at the wrong time.
But also,
Before they have their items, Frosk. Before they have their... No.
If they ran it down with the Leandries, it would have been fine.
but here's where the entire conversation is just stupid. And let's get back in to the the Mark Z LS debacle. All right, here we go. I'm jumping in.
Let's
here.
just
I'm not picking
let's
a
just
side. I'm just
we
saying
finally
in
closed
relation-
Pandora's box. Let's just open it right up.
in relation to the point made right there, which is games are not won or lost based off of item choices. I don't give a fuck if the game is won or lost off of item choices. Professional players should be optimizing to the absolute maximum. That is the bare minimum requirement I expect for them, and
They
items
don't
should be optimized.
They don't optimize their macro play. They don't optimize their build. That's the thing.
But
Professional players, and this is so I agree. We must have an idea about what the perfect game of League of Legends looks like, because that's how you have to judge what is a good and
I'm
a
not even
bad
talking
play.
about game. I'm just talking about items.
I know, but just in general, like that theory has to exist. But we then also must agree that that never has existed ever. There has never
Yeah.
been a perfect game of
True.
League of Legends. And so when people start arguing who won or lost draft in like a perfect vacuum in theory, I'm not saying that draft isn't important, but I am saying that, listen, motherfuckers, I know that that team has the stronger draft, but if you turn off the nameplate, doesn't matter.
I say this all the fucking time. Dagda can attest. I've argued with Lyric to the end of the day, like, about draft is not everything. But anyway, I agree, but I'm gonna counter your argument here, Ender, with of like players should be doing the perfect build every game. That is not just a matter of statistics, especially when you bring into the conversation of like, do I go right? So let's say you're Zoe, right? You go Ludens first, or do you go Protobelt first, right? Those are both viable build paths, but have two different styles and two different, like, you can have an opinion that one is better, and you can have opinion that the other one is better.
Yes, you can.
And it wouldn't surprise me if a caster would like flame that. However, you can. What's happening in my chat? On my chair, did you say? I'm lost. Anyway, opinions or not, like there are different ways to build champions without it being completely in, and for it to be okay.
Yes, I agree, but I think that at a very high level, there are maybe the example like Pro Bowl loses. Like there are scenarios where like you can pick and choose, but I think there are like very clear situations where it's like this is just clearly better, right? Like, and I mean, if you look at like what is the win rate change if you play 1,000 games with this item versus this item in this spot, it might be you win 2 more games, but that doesn't mean you should always take the 2 more games route, right? So if Protobelt edges out Ludens by like 0.5% win rate, you take Protobelt every time. You know, unless there's like more of a reason behind it as to like versus this type of comp, like this is better in that one. So I think that within a game, the correct next item can always be solved. I don't think I've been presented a situation where someone can be like, you can build either this or this. They're both fine. It's like, well, maybe there's a split where it's like, to accomplish this goal in this game, you build this item or this item, but then you can look at the goal and be like, well, do you need to accomplish that goal? If yes, then you do that item and that item is correct. So I think you can always actually solve that. I think that's how it goes.
Like a math perspective, if you put like a goal on it about I need to be able to do this much damage, I need to be able to do this number, then it's very easy to figure that out and be absolutely correct. But I think if it comes down to execute, because ideally we're talking about your itemization has to give you the most viable win conditions. And the team that has more win conditions, whether through their composition, through their itemization, through how they play into the other comp, theoretically you then say that team is going to win because they have 90 opportunities to win the game, whereas the other team has 10 opportunities.
Yeah.
But if you play into those 10 opportunities, and then it's like that, it's like, if let's take a bruiser in the top lane that doesn't go for bruiser items, but goes for tank items. And let's say it's like an egregious build. Just someone, everyone's like, this isn't the efficient item. You're supposed to be doing this. But if they play in a way that they are relying on, like what, the Black Cleaver versus Trinity or whatever the fuck that people were arguing about. Like they rely on CDR, or maybe you go for like a Gargoyle Stone Plate and people are like, what is that guy doing? But he's only about like getting into the back line and having the tank stats to just survive or to tie up and disrupt something rather than having like the best case damage scenario. Like I think that's when you get into the discussion of how does your items actually change your play style and like what your win conditions are in the moment and what your responsibility is into that team. And with this champion, I can either be, this frontline damage burst side lane, or I can be something that people normally don't see, where I'm Spirit Visage, fucking Knight's Vow on
Omnistone.
Jarvan every day.
Yeah, because I 100% agree with you, and I think my point would be that if you can solve what playstyle is best to win the game, highest win rate, etc., then you solve the build, and therefore builds should always be solvable. The hard part is not actually determining what build is best. The hard part is determining what playstyle is best.
Okay, I agree with that, but now we're just arguing
Boom.
semantics.
No, we're in agreement, I think.
I feel like
Okay.
we came to
Agreeing semantics, yeah, sure.
weird like conclusion that was somehow agreeable despite originally disagreeing. Wow.
I think
Agreeable
that
debate.
a lot
Here we go.
A lot
Let's
of the
go.
disagreements in League of Legends come down to two people arguing 2 points that actually don't
disagree
butt
with
heads.
one another. Yeah.
They're like 2 points that are right next to each other, but they can't. They look like the other person is arguing with you when you're so focused on your thing, and that's how you get
Reddit
disagreement.
posts.
I don't know. Reddit posts, exactly. It's true.
All right. So I want to shift. Unless Dagda, did you have something to add there?
No, I'm all good.
Sorry, I thought I just interrupted you. So I want to move the conversation on a little bit. As we're starting to wind down a little bit, I think, in the show. I wanted to ask you guys in the conversation that we had earlier about branding and where you came from and you guys as people. I wanted to ask, and this is a question that I'm personally very much interested in. What do you guys see as like what's next? So I'm not necessarily just talking like in the next year or so. I'm talking like in the long term. Do you guys have field goals? Do you guys have small things that you would like to hit? Like, where do you see yourselves going in the future? Would you like to just be a caster for the rest of your career if possible? I'm very much in the camp right now of like, I would like to do casting as long as I can do casting, basically. But I've pretty much only just stepped into the actual professional leagues. So I'm really curious where you guys see yourselves going and if you have goals or if you're kind of feeling it out. Because I certainly, as a caster that's just a 1 year in a major league, I'm kind of winging it. And I have like vague goals of what I would like to achieve eventually. But like, if another opportunity appears, like maybe if it's, a good enough opportunity, then something else comes up, right? Where do you guys sit on that? And do you have like a set plan? Are you also kind of feeling it out as you go? Frosk, we'll start with you. Oh, Dagda, you look like you want to say
I was just saying, Ender, we know you're going to make millions off your sitcom, so we'll take that out of the equation, and then we'll work from there.
outside of royalties. Outside of royalties.
I care very much about talent development. It's something that I worked a lot on in Oceania and then briefly in LPL. And I tried to work on it into LEC, but it didn't really take off and I wasn't the person who was like deemed responsible for it. But what in a perfect world, if I could have anything, I would love to be hired by Riot to literally be a talent manager and just look at casters from like EU Masters or the ERLs and like make it my job to watch the LPL and watch the LCK and watch EU Masters and then be able to stack rank casters and give them feedback and help them make development goals and then be a resource that Riot head management and leadership could use to help continue to develop the caster ecosystem and continue to develop their broadcast. I think right now Riot doesn't really know how to use or best use casters and is kind of going for the freelance thing because that's been established by traditional television and broadcasting, and a lot of the people who work up in higher management kind of have those backgrounds. But you have really strong endemic voices that I think can be more than just talking on a microphone. And if talking on the microphone is like just what they want to do, then that's fine. But like, why don't we have a trajectory or a funnel of moving casters into producer roles, into creative director roles, into talent management roles? Instead, it's like, show them up and have them cast the game. And it's like, there's more to that. And so ideally, that's what I would want to do. I think that there's a big problem with the ecosystem where caster salaries have been pretty capped and are going through, at least in the LCS and LEC markets, I don't know how it is for LPL, is kind of going through a shift where it's moving to day rate rather than to salary. It's figuring out and fine-tuning those numbers again, like kind of what happened back in 2015, 2016 when like the initial caster bump came through. But because of streaming, especially in North America, if you're a pro player, because the cycle should always be, okay, pro player plays, pro player retires, pro player becomes a broadcaster. Guys like Cadril and Whippo are names that LEC fans will always want to grab. But the thing is that why would I, as a pro player, go and become a caster when I could A, if I'm in Europe, go to North America and get paid buckets of money,
Yeah.
B, stream and make buckets of money and not have like the same responsibilities of like working the day job, like do the gig on the side. C, go into coaching or analyst work and still make buckets of money. You know, like there's all of these things, and if the inflation of the player salaries is so high and the caster salaries are not comparable to it any means, then you're not going to see that healthy rotation, which is what I think we've seen. There's been a stall out. You know, Ender doesn't have pro player experience. Bevvies doesn't have pro player experience. I do not have pro player experience. Like, there's no more retired pros that come through. And I think people see Cadril and they really want that to be option. I have no idea what Cadril's plans are going to be. I think he'd be a phenomenal addition to a broadcast. But, you know, if you're going from making, and I'm not saying that I know what Cadril makes at all, but just from some of the salaries that you've seen, like
Yeah.
your
As an
salary
example
is-
salary, yeah.
Yeah.
As an example salary, you are not making that much money. That you, as a caster, you do not get anywhere close to the type of money that they make. And these are young guys, and so it is going to stall out. And Riot hasn't had to face that reality yet, but that reality is going to come, and something's going to have to shift or change. And I don't know what the answer is. Maybe they get saved because it's still a relatively small field where, you know, there's only so many spots and it's fine right now. But as people like Deficio and Papa Smithy and Jat realize that they hit the ceiling and then there's nothing else, and then they move out of the ceiling or out of the ecosystem, and then other people have to come down, eventually these spots need to be filled, and they're not being filled by the people that Riot thinks they're going to be filled by.
So Frosk, I don't know if you knew that, but LCS is actually buying out my contract from the LEC for $5 million. That's I mean, it's on the table. It's not locked in yet.
G2 weird champ.
But anyway, Riot, please hire me. I think that this is going to be a problem. I want to save you a lot of money in the long run, because eventually there's not going to be a lot of people, and those very few people are going to turn and be like, "Yo, negotiate with me," and then Riot suddenly going to be negotiating with not very many people that are going to really jack some shit up.
I do just want to quickly throw in the conversation that Frosk, like, I was the guy that asked you the question that got you saying this, that got you the job, that got you to the position where you can hire people. So if you're looking for casters, just anyway. So also to you, Ender, as well. Like, what's the next best thing? Like, or what's the goals in the big term? Or are you winging it? Because I'm fucking winging it.
Honestly, I was winging it for a while, because to me, like, casting was the end goal, and then it came so much sooner than I expected that I was like, wait, what's the next thing? Like, I sort of freaked out like 2018 and even last year a bit. I was like, but I've always had like the thing I was trying to do. Like, it wasn't always casting. Like, there was a lot of different things.
There's that horrific feeling of directionlessness where you're like,
yeah. But it's why it's why this year for me has been really eye-opening, from the amount of like creative freedom you have on LEC, from writing content pieces to acting in them. Like, I actually found I really have a passion for those sorts of things, and I would actually really like to move into mainstream entertainment, whether it is like writing or acting. Like, either of those two things really interest me, and yeah, that's what I see myself doing in a world after esports, because I hope there's a world after esports. I don't think I want to be casting for the rest of my life.
What about you guys? Are you casting when you're like 30?
I don't. Well, I mean, that's 2 years away, so I don't know anymore. But
yeah, I was gonna say it's literally a year and a quarter for me. So yeah, probably, like, hopefully, actually.
Like, Munch has been around a little bit longer than me, but like, I worked up until 2019. I left my job and I worked in finance to start casting. So I'm fairly new to the scene, where like I was doing it a lot beforehand. Like, I'd done the masters and all that kind of stuff, but it always been as a side for a hobby kind of idea. And eventually got to the point where I was like, wait, I'm actually making enough money from casting that I don't need to do this finance job. So I was like, right, well, I'm going to give it a shot. So right now I'm very much kind of on the winging it side and kind of seeing where it leads to, because I'm not really sure. And the fact that I get to do it, like, I'm super grateful, but God only knows what the scene is going to be like in 2, 3, 5, 10 years time. Like,
yeah. I was being a little facetious earlier, where I'm not I don't have set goals of what I want to be, but I've been working full time for 6 years in esports now. And I've done a lot of casting, I've done a lot of production as well. I've worked full time as a producer. And I'm at a position where I really, really disliked working as a producer, and I don't think it was producing necessarily that I disliked, but maybe the crowd I was with, or there's 1,000 factors, right? But I do think I was pretty good at it, so maybe that's a path that I could go down later on. However, the reason that I am even involved in esports in the first place is I wanted to be a caster, right? I saw Joe Miller, I saw D-Man, I saw Quickshot, and I was like, fuck, man, I want to do that. So until I've made it to the World Championships, until I've made it to a point where I have inspired people in the way that those people inspired me, I'm not giving up on this shit. I am gonna make it to that point, and until I have achieved that goal, this is absolutely what I want to do.
Is it the world final that you want, or is it just worlds? Is it
It's
like, where is it? Is it like,
it
is
is
it a
the world final?
Is it a semi-final?
It's the world final. That's ultimately the goal, and ultimately, even I think if I made it to the world final, I'm not sure the thought would be, all right, I've done this, let's go and produce. I think actually the thought would be, there is like a romantic thought in my head of like being that kind of like 60-year-old guy that's from way back in the day that knows of players you never heard of. That's like, you know how like I know he's not a particularly popular figure anymore, but like Gary Lineker, for example, in football, he's been on that desk in the Premier League for forever, right? I would love to eventually be that guy, and
We're both American.
That's
Yeah. I was gonna say.
Okay, well, anyone that's English knows who that is.
Ben Scully, Frosk.
Anyone who's eaten Walker's crisps knows exactly who Gary Lineker is. But like, just being that like synonymous with the game would be obviously the ultimate dream. That is an incredibly high goal to reach, but that would be the big dream for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat, but I think one of the guy who's like inspired me to kind of go into esports to begin with was a guy called Sean Plott, Day 9. I'm sure people know who
Day
he is,
9,
but
I've never heard
Day
of
9,
him.
yeah. But he was always like, look, don't put all your eggs into the one basket. Here's like 30 different things that you can do within esports. So that's kind of the model that I'm taking right now is, look, I'm not going to just I'm going to put a lot of effort into this, but I'm going to make sure that I've got like a lot of other stuff on the side, because if one goes bad, well, at least then I've got a lot of other things that I can fall back on as well. And that's kind of the steps that I'm taking, but it's probably a very measured approach because I'm coming into this with after leaving a job in finance to come into this.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things as well, moving away from normal society into esports, because it's still the Wild West. People say it's not, but this is still the Wild West. All right, I think the conversation is sort of.
I actually have one more question, if you guys don't mind. It was just
Go,
because myself and Joe had this conversation before, and I'm always curious to find out off of other casters. Is kind of like, what is the thing that excites you about casting? Like, what is the thing that gets you up in the morning? You go, this is really cool. Like, is it that teaching moment where you're like, here's this really fucking cool thing that I found. Like, I really want to share it with you. Here's that thing. Or is it the moment where you get to make someone smile, or you get to share this really cool experience? Like, have that moment of connection with the fans. Like, what is the thing that actually makes you want to be a caster?
For me, it's the performance element of it. I think I'm a really competitive person. And I don't really get that in casting, and that's like the big thing that I miss out on it. But for me, it's like very similar to like be in front of the camera, have a lot of eyes on you, and like have to put on a show. And to me, that's just really exciting. The pressure doesn't really get to me, but like I feed off of it like super, super well. It's just a rush for me, and yeah, cameras go on. I'm having a good time.
It's the story element. I've cast for so long now that I've seen a lot of players like literally grow up on stages before, where I like cast their first game and then almost cast them, some people like through to retirement. I remember I was casting IMA versus WE 2016 when IMA qualified, and Amazing J made the crazy flank teleport on WE in game 5, and they ran it from basically their inhib all the way through and killed the 2 towers and then qualified for Worlds. When, like, the important thing was the context of that moment. I'd been so against IMA all year because I felt that they were so one-dimensional, and WE were always the better team. They were always favorite. They always had like way more ways to win. And then for IMA to win in that way, to finally prove themselves as like the 3rd best LPL team, for Amazing J to get revenge because he'd been on EDG and then benched and then kicked to the sister team and then said, I'll get IMA all the way back into the LPL and then I'll take them to Worlds. And people were like, you're fucking crazy. You can't do it. And to see him then make that play in fucking the overtime buzzer shot from like half court down. And he's like, he was playing his famous Nautilus. He did his TP flank, which is what he's famous for. He fucking started it. And I was casting that and we were just losing our shit. And Fish had like a really great win moment call. And I remember seeing Amazing J, he literally just started sobbing. And the stage was 4 corners. And Amazing J, like he gets up and he's just sobbing, and they have to go to each section of the stage and they have to take a bow.
My God.
If you go back and listen to the broadcast, I start crying, and I just like, I'd watched him forever. I fucking watched him come up, and it's that shit that like really matters to me, which is why I think I get so hung up on like when people get into like pissing contests of like, yeah, Frosk doesn't know anything, fucking idiot, it's terrible. Like I'm like, that shit doesn't matter. It's like, yes, there's always going to be a place for that shit, but like, holy fuck, you know what matters? It matters that I knew how much that guy had fucking gone through for that moment, and I knew why he fucking broke out into sobs. I understood the gravitas of that, and I tried to make you understand the gravitas of that, because that's why it's a fucking sport and not just your randos playing a game, raging at your friends for building a fucking Morello.
I can respect that. I can respect that big time. At the end of the day, we are storytellers. That is the top and bottom of it. People follow people, not games. So I think that's a fantastic moment to end the show on, honestly. I think that's really powerful. So on that note, guys, do you want to, if there's anything you want to shout out, any last words you want to say, I think we'll close it out here. So Ender, we'll start with you, then Frost, then Dagda, and then we'll close the show.
Close out the show. Josie wants to talk to you, Frosk. She's mad.
Yeah, I was supposed to call my girlfriend.
Uh-oh.
She's fucking raging in Twitch chat right now.
I'm sorry, Josie.
When my girlfriend, she doesn't text me, she shows up in my Twitch chat. Like, I don't know how 2020.
That is the best shit ever. Oh my God.
Your girlfriend might be a Zoomer. I'm just saying.
She's definitely a Zoomer. Final thoughts. I'll say this again. I fucking love building up my colleagues. Ender is probably one of the most underrated casters of a very fucking long time. I've never met anyone who came into the casting scene which is much raw talent as Ender has. Like, most people start at a very low level and you can see the potential and you see them rise. Ender started at such a high fucking level of polish and it's only gotten better. I think you were robbed of LEC finals. I'll say that publicly a million times. And I think that you should have gone farther in Worlds, and you do not get enough respect. Same thing to LPL crew. I listened to your guys' cast a lot. Dagda, Lyric, I think I learned so much from you guys. I think Clement, also super fucking underrated. Yeah. People just decided that, like, Western audience, like, now Clement's starting to get recognition, but like, people just decided that Clement didn't know what he was talking about because it was just so different from what they had learned in LCS and LEC. Well, guess what, motherfuckers? LPL actually knows how to play the game. So when Clement says something that blows your mind, like, you should just believe it because it's just true. So, yeah.
I respect that. Big respect for Clement.
I love chatting to Clement because, like, you'll just be talking, like, you're watching a game with him and he'll be like talking absolute nonsense, and then he'll say like the most perfectly worded, like, 30 seconds of brilliant analysis, and you're like, can you just say that like one more time? It's just like every single time.
Text that to me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, we're gonna close out the show. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Ender, Froskurinn, thank you for having some
Ender a shout out? Ender give Ender a shout out?
Ender went
Did Ender
first.
not give a shout out?
He took a shot.
Yeah.
Oh, did he? Oh, sorry,
He
my
went
bad.
first.
my
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, we're gonna close out the show.
Josie.
Yeah, we all miss you, Josie.
Yeah.
Josie, thank you for joining us. It's just
She's
much
literally in
appreciated.
Cardiff right now. And no offense to, well, it doesn't really matter to him, the Irishman, but
No.
to you. The fucking Cardiff is awful. Cardiff is,
It doesn't matter to me. It's in Wales.
yeah, but that's
Who
part
gives a
of
shit about
England.
Wales? Anyway, we're gonna close the show before I say anything too offensive. We're getting out of here. We'll catch you on the next one.